All right, welcome back to the channel yet again. Well, while we tool around twiddling our thumbs and waiting for the market to do something worthy of discussing, I thought I would take a little bit of a diversion. And this Mind Your Decisions channel here on YouTube tends to show up in my feed from time to time. And when it does, I look at it and just go through the video and have a little bit of fun. I thought this one was cool, so I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Again, it's a bit of a divergence from what I normally do, but there's nothing to do. So let's do this instead. I thought this was cool, so let's listen in.
Tom and Rick can do a job in 2 hours. Tom and Harry can do the same job in 3 hours. Rick and Harry can do the same job in 4 hours. How long will it take for all 3 of them to do this job?
All right, so that's the question. And we'll go quickly through his video here. It's 10 minutes long. We don't want to be much longer than that, so we'll skip the unimportant stuff. Now, evidently, this was given to U.S. college students, and it tricked up a lot of them. Now, Presh here, he always does a good job. He does OG algebra. And where I can, I like to myself, so we're going to do this, but we're going to do it in a different form and use matrix math. This question is perfectly set up for matrix math. Now he goes through, and we'll look at this, and you'll see where a lot of people go wrong and got it wrong here on this college student test, as I understand it. So let's quickly go through this as if I'll show you what is incorrect here. And we'll do the same thing as Presh, but we're going to do it in matrix form. What we'll do here with matrix form is we'll create the matrix, and the columns will be Tom, Rick, and Harry in that order. And the fourth column on the far right will be the time that they do it in. So what you're looking at here is Tom, Rick, and Harry. So the first calculation is Tom and Rick, no Harry involved. They did it in 2 hours. Tom, no Rick, and Harry did it in 3. And no Tom and Rick and Harry did it in 4. So by the way, you can tell Harry's a dog fucker. All right, so it creates the matrix like that. So you can see here is the column for Tom, Rick, and Harry. And the fourth, the final column, is how long they do it in. Now this is incorrect, as you'll see here. So we've set this up in the matrix, and now we'll see how Presh does it here.
This problem appears in an article by Andrei Tum, and he explains, this problem can be solved by elementary algebra and a few arithmetical calculations. Most of my students could not solve it. A similar sentiment comes at the University of Maryland, who said the problem was missed by nearly all students in his senior level college math course.
Now I have to say that's pretty scary. Not just your intro college math, because I could see pretty much everyone missing that. I've had occasion to teach courses that require as a prerequisite entry-level college math. So I have a good idea of what entry-level college math looks like. And am I allowed to be non-teacher-like and say it's fucking pathetic? Yeah, because you can't say that in class. Not rightly. It's pretty bad. But senior level, I'm a little worried here. I'm concerned.
So what were the students doing wrong? What was their common mistake in attempting to solve the problem? So here's how many students approached the question. They looked at the first sentence, Tom and Rick can do a job in 2 hours, and they translated it as the following equation. Tom would be represented by the variable t, Rick would be represented by the variable r, and this must be equal to 2. So this would be the equation t plus r is equal to 2. They then translated the second sentence analogously as t plus h is equal to 3, and the third sentence would become r plus h is equal to 4.
So just as you see, if you had T, R, and H as these columns, there'll be 1T plus 1R, no H equals 2. And you get the point. How long will it take? Let's listen in.
Now, how long would it take for all 3 of them to do this job? Well, that must be the sum of the variables. So you're trying to evaluate what T plus R plus H is equal to. So here's how they solved it from here. You have a system of equations, and you want to solve for the sum of the 3 variables. So a clever trick is that you can add up all of these 3 equations. Notice we have 2 terms of T, we have 2 terms of R, and 2 terms of H. So this will be 2T plus 2R plus 2H, and then we have the sum of 2, 3, and 4. 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 4 is equal to 9. So we want to solve for T plus R plus H, so we will take this equation and take the common factor of 2 out. So we have 2 times the sum of T, R, and H is equal to 9, divide both sides of this equation by 2, so that t plus r plus h is equal to 9 over 2. So this is equal to 4.5 hours.
All right, so you can see the way it's done in straight up algebra. Now let's take a look at it in matrix form. And for this, we will invoke our good friend, Carl Friedrich Gauss. And we will do Gaussian elimination. Actually, we'll go one step further and do Gauss-Jordan for the full reduced row echelon formula. And for that, we will make a new one, new matrix. And this is the reduced row echelon form of A. And you'll see over here on the right, we are getting the equivalent of this. We need one more calculation. We just need to sum Tom, Rick, and Harry's time here, which again, it's incorrect, but this is what they did. This is the equivalent, 4.5. All right, so this is incorrect. This is what most people did. Now listen, the shame isn't that you set it up wrong and you got a wrong answer. That's not the shame. The shame is what's coming, is you didn't realize by looking at that answer, these college students didn't realize by looking at that answer that it was completely ridiculous. If Tom and Rick did it in 2 hours, the only way that this whole thing is going to be less than 2 hours is if Harry, who we know is the dog fucker here, you can tell from the equations, but he was a net negative, and a pretty huge negative at that. And although the question would have been made, I guess, more fun if Harry was a net negative, you know, the guy that shows up and puts you behind 3 hours before he even starts, that guy, he's not that bad. So the college students should have recognized that this was a bunk answer. They did something in the setup that's wrong.
And that's the answer that many students put down. It took all 3 of them 4.5 hours to do the job. But let's look at the question again. Tom and Rick can do a job in 2 hours. Tom and Harry can do the same job in 3 hours. Rick and Harry can do the same job in 4 hours. So how long will it take for all 3 of them to do this job? Well, if it only takes Tom and Rick 2 hours to do the job, you might be wondering how adding Harry is going to suddenly make it take longer. It suddenly takes 4.5 hours. Tom and Harry can do the job in 3 hours, but suddenly adding one more person takes 1.5 hours longer. Rick and Harry were doing the job in 4 hours, but then when they added Tom, it took half an hour longer? No, this makes absolutely no sense. It will take less time when all 3 are working together. So this answer cannot logically be right. No student should put this answer even if they had solved it this way. So the question is, what is the correct way to solve this problem?
Okay, and there's the point that was made. Even if you work it out this way, come on, give your head a shake. And I think why this type of video does appeal to me a little bit more is because I've worked with people that just blindly do stuff like this, and they put it down, and you're staring at them and asking the question, how does, does that pass the sniff test? Does it make any sense? And it just shows really how lost people can be when they're really not thinking in the area of mathematics. And these are math students. Okay, so how do we solve it? Obviously, the setup of this matrix is incorrect. Let's start over then.
Perhaps most students, when they see a word problem, get intimidated by all of the words and they just want to mindlessly translate the words into equations. So instead of looking at the entire word problem, let's just focus on one sentence at a time and let's think about what it means. So Tom and Rick can do a job in 2 hours. So this translates into the following thought process. We have 2 hours of Tom's work plus 2 hours of Rick's work, and that is going to be a complete job. That's one whole job.
Okay, and from there you could just follow down to not belabor this point here. That's a good way of looking at it right there. That is the way of looking at it. So in that respect, it will give you this matrix here. So this would be 2 hours of Tom's work, 2 hours of Rick's work. And now the right column isn't in hours, it's one full job. Right? And when you do the other 2 equations, it comes out looking like this. All right, so let's do the same. Reduce row. And you've got some crazy numbers over here. And let's take a look at that and ask yourself, what is this? What are these decimals here? Well, this is the rate that each one does the work with respect to one job in an hour. So you can see here, as we could tell just by looking at the question, Harry's a big-time dog fucker. He's way slower at the rate of his doing work versus the other 2 guys. So what we want to do here is sum this final column. So again, And what you have here now is how much of the work is done by the sum of these three individuals in 1 hour. So there's slightly more than half the job done in an hour. And to find out how long it takes to get the entire job done, we would just do the reciprocal of that. And it's 1.8462 hours to complete the one job. So we don't need the 1 hours, but we do need to find out, at least right now, we need to find out how much is 0.8462 in minutes this is. So we could do ANS minus 1 to get that out there, times 60. And we get about 51 minutes. So an hour and 51 minutes for all three of them to do the job. And when you're looking at it this way, you could do the same thing individually to see, it wasn't asked, but if you were asked, this is how much, this is the rate that Tom does the job. You could do the same thing and see how long it would take him to do this job solo. And same thing with the other two fellows. But let's check in with Presh again and look at the long form amount of math that it takes to come up with those answers versus simple matrix work, which is why I always push using matrices where it's possible.
Now, a good student will know an unstated assumption is that each person is worth how we can translate the war. So you have a rate variable R. So this is equal to done in 3 hours. So it must be 3. Harry can do the same job in 4 hours. So we must have 4 times R plus 4 times H is equal to 1. We have one final part of the question, which is how long will it take for all 3 of them to do this job? So how do we translate that sentence into an equation? Let's rephrase it in terms of the subjects of Tom, Rick, and Harry. We want to know Tom, Rick, and Harry will take X hours. We will now divide both sides by T plus R plus H, the third equation by 4. R plus H is equal to 1. In order to sum the fractions, let's get a common denominator. Let's just multiply these denominators, 13 over 12. So we figured out that 2 times T divided by 13 over 24 is equal to 24. Tom, Rick, and Harry about 1 hour and 51 minutes to do the job.
Woo! That's a lot of work to get the same thing. And yes, you can say, well, hey, I use this shortcut here, this reduced row echelon form. Yeah, you're right. I just let the computer do that. And for any real issue, real problem with multiple equations and multiple variables, you're going to want to do it that way. You're not going to do it, want to do it long form. But even doing this long form, you're way less time. And it's much easier to do than all of this mess. And you'll notice you're doing the same thing, just a different manner. It's just much cleaner with matrices. All right, for those of you that care, I hope that helped.